Hey, my most wonderful art students. Today we're going to be talking about something called one-point perspective. This is an ancient technique that artists have been using forever to showcase their skills in observation and to show that they know how to draw something that looks three-dimensional. Now, one-point perspective involves one vanishing point on a horizon line. This sounds like a lot, I know, so let's slow it down and take a look at a couple of works of art that showcase one-point perspective. So the most common example of this is the railway or the road example. Here you can see a really distinct outline that all lines that move away from the viewer move towards this one single vanishing point that must sit on the horizon line. Those are some vocab terms that I am going to be using a lot, so it will be really helpful to remember those two, vanishing point and horizon line. Now let's go way back in time to about 1400 and talk about a man named Filippo Brunelleschi. He was an Italian architect and designer, and he really discovered this one-point perspective technique and idea by observing buildings. And he spent a long time just noticing the way that things moved away from you. They got smaller in space as they got further away. Before then, artists were just not understanding this concept of space and the fact that things get smaller, things change. We see things differently the further away that they are from the viewer. But the moment that artists started paying more attention to the way that objects moved backwards and got smaller in space, the idea just took off. Artists everywhere started grasping to this idea, and paintings and drawings became so much more realistic and so much more lifelike. In fact, there was one done in a cathedral where the first time that viewers had seen this painting, they tried to walk into it. That's how realistic and lifelike it looked, because they had just never been used to something quite this three-dimensional, really. And this concept is still super relevant to today's modern world. One really quick Instagram search, and I am inundated with pictures of artists showcasing their talents with technique like this. So we've got artists showing off simple things like boxes in different shapes, but then you've got a little bit more complex with cityscapes. But even movie makers and photographers will showcase this linear perspective in their work. And these are the artists that are going to inspire us as we create our very own works of art that showcase one-point perspective. So guys, I know that was a lot of information all at one time. Have no fear. We are going to have some time to process and let that sink in for a little bit. We're going to work on a project that involves collage and one-point perspective all in one. So day number 1, all we are working on is collaging a background. Day number 2 is when the actual knowledge of one-point perspective comes into play. Now, let's get started, my friends. Hopefully by now I have shared with you my affinity and my love for using recycled materials, so we are going to use recycled newspapers for our project. I am going to rip my pieces of paper for the project, but you have the option if you would like to use scissors for a little bit nicer and neater lines. I really like the way the jagged edges look. So I'm measuring these things against the palm of my hand because that's a really good size to know that I can get this thing done in one class period, but I'll also have good details and good texture from the rips and the edges of my paper. Now the goal is to get this entire thing filled up in one class period. I know you can do it. We're using glue sticks specifically because the newspaper is pretty thin, and the white glue would definitely cause the paper to wrinkle really badly, and be sure to fill up every single inch of this page. Now, if you get finished early, I want you to double check with a buddy, make sure they think that you are good to go. But then if you get done, I want you to grab a piece of paper or to grab your sketchbook and to practice drawing one-point perspective objects or shapes. So boxes are really good, triangles are another one to practice with, but if that's not enough of a challenge for you, think outside the box. So maybe try some stars, maybe make up some objects, totally up to you. Oh, hey, reminder, always write your name on the back of your paper. No matter what we're doing in here, write your name on the back of it and your homeroom teacher's name. And now, back to what I was saying before. The goal is to fill this thing up entirely, completely with newspaper, but if you get done, early finishers activity is to practice your 1-point perspective shapes so that we know exactly what to do next week when we finish this project. Good luck today. Let me know if you have any questions. And now, my friends, it is time to move on to the drawing portion of today's events. This is going to be the really simple part, just picking a whole bunch of random different shapes to draw in kind of a circle pattern around one center vanishing point. I would suggest to stick with pretty simple basic shapes: circles, diamonds, triangles, hearts. I would not go with any octagons. Stars would be okay. They're a little bit complicated, but I wouldn't go any more difficult than stars. And do about 10 to 15 different shapes in a big circular pattern around your center vanishing point. Your next step, my friends, is to grab a ruler and a pencil. I am showing you only in Sharpie just so that you can see better. Please, please, please use pencil, because this could get really, really confusing, and you might make a mistake today. It's probably going to happen because these lines are probably going to get crossed. Now, you want to start out by drawing lines from points on the closest shape to the inside. Notice that I started from the inside and now I'm working outwards. This is because you don't want your lines to overlap today. You want it to look like they're going behind the other line. So start in, then work out, and this thing will look so much more three-dimensional. Now, you also really want to take your time. It looks like I'm moving in super speed motion, but trust me, I had to speed this up, this video, to 5 times the regular speed that I took to work on this. So go slow. Be patient with yourself, and remember to work from the inside out. And you could also add in some extra shapes like I did here if you would really like to, and you've got a little bit time left, but I added them to the outside. When you are done drawing, you can go back over your pencil lines with a Sharpie. That way they really pop and stand out more. Now, to color this thing in, we will be using colored pencils today. Pick about 3. I plan to use the colors yellow, green, and blue because they are analogous colors. That means that they are all next to each other on the color wheel. And that's one way that you know that they'll look good together, is if they are all really close on the color wheel. Now, for shading purposes, you're also going to need the color white, and then eventually black. So notice that as I'm coloring, I stop after I've filled everything in, and I use my white colored pencil to color in the original shape, white. This helps it look closer to us. The lighter something is, the closer it looks towards us. The darker something is, it looks like it's further away. So later on in this video, you'll see that I use black to do the opposite. So towards the center of the drawing, you use black to shade it so that looks like it's far away. This just helps the whole thing look three-dimensional and look like it's really popping out at us. Here, when you have the whole thing totally colored in, you'll go back with your black colored pencil. I am using a crayon just because that was the quickest thing that I had on hand. Notice that I'm really not going any further than halfway up the shape. And then I'm doing a small little line of shading behind each shape that you can only see part of it. When you're finished coloring, you are going to also go ahead and start cutting the whole thing out. It's helpful at first to kind of free this whole shape from the paper, so cut around it kind of loosely, and then you can spend a lot more time slowly and carefully cutting this thing out. Now these thin edges are going to be really difficult to cut. Notice how I cut down one edge and then I go to the right of it instead of cutting towards the center, trying to turn the whole thing and come back the other way. Take your scissors, cut down towards the center, and then go to the other side, cut down towards the center, and where your scissors meet in the middle, that will cut out on its own automatically, like you're about to see now. Final step of this project is to decide where you would like your 1-point perspective explosion to go on your paper, and then we are going to glue it down. You do not have to use a bead here. The purpose of the bead is to help the explosion pop off the page and look just a little bit more three-dimensional, but you don't have to use one, and keep in mind if you do use the bead, you'll have to leave your project here so that it can have the chance to dry. If you want to be able to take it home today, don't use the bead. When everything is positioned properly and held down into place, you can walk this thing to the drying rack to let it dry out there. And then you can come to see me about an early finishers activity. Good luck! I am so excited about the things that you are going to create today.